My name is Olivia Mitchell. I'm 29, and last month my parents demanded I empty my savings account to pay for my younger sister's out-of-state college tuition. Family helps family, my mother insisted over dinner, while my father nodded solemnly. After all we've done for you, this is the least you can do for your sister. What they didn't know was that the entry-level lab job I'd told them about was actually my cover while I developed an energy storage technology that Google just acquired for $1.2 billion. I'd kept my success secret for 3 years, tired of my family treating my career like a cute hobby while praising my sister's every achievement. As they outlined their plans for my money that evening, I finally decided it was time. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, there's something I should probably tell you about my work situation. The look on their faces when I explained I was now worth over $300 million is something I'll never forget. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. If you've ever had your achievements minimized while a sibling was celebrated, hit subscribe. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting successful and watching the shock on their faces when they realize who you've become. I grew up in suburban Ohio, in a family where academic achievement was everything, but only when it came from my sister Jessica. She was the brilliant one from childhood. Science fair trophies, accelerated classes, and constant praise from our parents. I was smart too, but quieter, more methodical, drawn to chemistry experiments in our garage rather than public achievements. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my adolescence. When Jessica would bring home an A+ on a test, my parents would celebrate with ice cream or a special dinner. When I did the same, it was met with a casual "good job" and immediate questions about what Jessica was working on next. This pattern continued throughout elementary and middle school. Jessica was placed in gifted programs, given private tutoring, and enrolled in expensive summer enrichment camps. Meanwhile, my requests for a chemistry set or science books were often forgotten or postponed. It wasn't that my parents were cruel, they just had a blind spot when it came to recognizing my particular type of intelligence. By high school, I had internalized the family hierarchy. Jessica was the star, the one destined for greatness. I was the reliable, unspectacular daughter who would likely find a stable but unremarkable career. I focused on chemistry and physics, finding refuge in laboratories where results mattered more than personality or family connections. My chemistry teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was the first adult who seemed to truly see my potential. She stayed after school to help me design independent research projects and encouraged me to apply to top science universities despite my parents' lukewarm support. "You have a remarkable mind, Olivia," she told me once. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise, not even family." With Mrs. Rodriguez's guidance, I applied to MIT and several other prestigious science and engineering programs. When the acceptance letters arrived, including a full scholarship to MIT, I was ecstatic. My parents were surprised, but not particularly impressed. "Well, it's not an Ivy League, but it's still good," my mother remarked, before quickly changing the subject back to Jessica's latest achievements. She had been accepted to Princeton around the same time, and while my full scholarship went unmentioned, my parents threw an elaborate party for Jessica's acceptance, inviting extended family and friends to celebrate. That spring, I overheard my mother on the phone with my aunt. "Yes, Olivia got into that technology school in Massachusetts," she said. "It's fine for what she wants to do. Nothing like Princeton, of course, but she's always been more practical than ambitious." Those words stung. but they also hardened something in me. If practical was their assessment of my potential, I would show them what practical could accomplish. At MIT, I thrived in ways I never could have at home. Surrounded by peers who valued intellectual curiosity and innovation, I discovered my passion for materials science alongside chemical engineering. I worked long hours in research labs, developing a particular interest in energy storage technologies, batteries, capacitors, and other systems that could help solve the renewable energy puzzle. During my sophomore year, I joined a research lab working on next-generation battery technology. Professor Lin, my advisor, became another crucial mentor who recognized something in me that my family had missed. "You have an unusual way of approaching problems, Olivia," he observed after I proposed a novel electrode configuration. "You see connections that others miss." By junior year, I was co-authoring research papers and presenting at conferences. My parents attended exactly one of these presentations when it happened to coincide with a weekend they were visiting Boston. They spent most of the presentation looking confused, and immediately afterward suggested we go see Jessica's chamber music performance, as she was doing a semester abroad program at the Boston Conservatory. "Your thing was interesting, honey," my mother said as we walked to the car. "But it's all a bit abstract, isn't it? Jessica's music is something everyone can appreciate." I graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a double major in chemical engineering and materials science. My parents attended graduation but left early to catch Jessica's summer concert. She'd switched majors from biochemistry to music performance, a change they supported wholeheartedly while questioning my practical career path. "Chemistry is fine if you want a steady job," my father would say, "but it's hardly exciting or prestigious." My graduation gift from my parents was a $200 gift card to a professional clothing store. For job interviews, my mother explained, Jessica had received a $3,000 cello when she completed her sophomore year. They had no idea that my senior project had caught the attention of a major tech incubator, or that I'd been recruited directly into their innovation lab with equity options. I didn't bother explaining. Years of having my achievements diminished had taught me to keep my successes to myself. The tech incubator, Horizon Labs, was a perfect fit for my ambitions. Located in a converted warehouse in Cambridge, it brought together scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs working on climate technology solutions. I joined a small team focused on energy storage, the critical missing piece in the renewable energy puzzle. Traditional batteries faced significant limitations for grid-scale storage. They were expensive, contained toxic materials, degraded over time, and couldn't store energy efficiently for long periods. Our team was exploring a completely new approach to energy storage, using novel materials that could potentially revolutionize the field. When I called my parents to tell them about my new position, I deliberately downplayed it. "I got a lab job at a research company," I said casually. "The pay is decent and the benefits are good." It wasn't a lie, just a significant understatement of both my role and the potential impact of our work. "Well, that sounds stable," my mother replied, "though I was hoping you might try for something at one of those big pharmaceutical companies. Your cousin Robert works at Pfizer, and they have wonderful retirement plans." Before I could respond, she excitedly changed the subject. "Did we tell you Jessica's quartet might tour Europe next year? They're finalizing the details, but it's looking very promising." This conversation established the pattern for the next few years. During holiday visits and family calls, I shared minimal information about my work, describing routine lab procedures or mundane office politics, rather than the groundbreaking research we were actually conducting. My family, true to form, expressed polite disinterest before turning the conversation to Jessica's musical career. Meanwhile, our team at Horizon Labs was making remarkable progress. 18 months into our research, we had a breakthrough, a novel composite material that could store and release energy with unprecedented efficiency. The material was abundant, non-toxic, and could be manufactured using existing production methods. Most importantly, it performed at 5 times the capacity of existing technologies at approximately half the cost. The implications were enormous. With this technology, renewable energy could finally overcome its greatest limitation: the intermittent nature of wind and solar power. Energy could be stored when production was high and released when needed, making a fully renewable grid practically possible for the first time. Our team leaders recognized immediately that we had something revolutionary. Within weeks, we had filed provisional patents and begun discussions with the incubator's legal team about forming a separate company. 3 months later, Enerstore Technologies was officially founded, with me as co-founder and chief technology officer. That Christmas, as my family exchanged gifts in our Ohio living room, no one had any idea that I had just signed term sheets with venture capitalists for a $14 million Series A funding round, with a company valuation of $50 million. My stake in the company was worth over $13 million on paper, more than my parents' house and all their retirement accounts combined. "How's the lab job going?" my father asked perfunctorily as he handed me a $25 gift card to Amazon. "It's going well," I replied simply. "We're making progress." Jessica received a weekend spa retreat package from our parents. When she opened it, my mother beamed. "You deserve some relaxation after all your hard work. We're so proud of how you're pursuing your passion, despite the financial challenges." I bit my tongue to avoid pointing out the irony, that my practical career choice had led to financial success beyond anything they could imagine, while Jessica's passionate pursuit had led to persistent financial instability that our parents constantly subsidized. The next 2 years were a whirlwind of development, testing, and scaling. Enerstore grew from our initial team of 7 to over 60 employees. We moved from the incubator to our own facility, built pilot production lines, and began partnerships with major renewable energy companies for real-world testing. Throughout this period, I maintained the fiction with my family that I was working a standard lab job. During one particularly frustrating Thanksgiving dinner, as my mother praised Jessica for a performance at a local coffee shop that had paid her $100, I excused myself to take a call from our lead investor about finalizing terms for our $120 million Series B round. "Sorry about that," I said, returning to the table. "Work stuff." "On Thanksgiving," my mother scolded. "Surely your little lab can manage without you for one day." I nodded and passed the mashed potatoes, not mentioning that. The work stuff had just increased my net worth by approximately $22 million. The final phase of our company's journey began when Google's energy division approached us about a potential acquisition. After months of due diligence and negotiations, we reached an agreement. Google would acquire Enerstore Technologies for $1.2 billion in cash and stock, with additional performance bonuses if certain technical milestones were met. As the news was about to break publicly, I received a call from my father. "Your mother and I want to host a special family dinner next weekend for our anniversary. We need you to come home. It's important." I flew home for my parents' anniversary dinner, booking an economy seat despite my substantial net worth. Old habits die hard. The house looked exactly as it always had, modest, well-kept, with Jessica's achievements prominently displayed on the wall of fame in the hallway. My lone MIT diploma hung in a simple frame near the basement door. My mother greeted me with her usual distracted affection, a quick hug before returning to dinner preparations. My father nodded from his recliner, barely looking up from his newspaper. It was as if the past decade of my life had never happened, as if I were still the unremarkable daughter, living in the shadow of her brilliant sister. Jessica arrived an hour later, making a dramatic entrance with stories of her latest performance. My parents listened raptly as she described the venue, the audience, the recognition she'd received from a minor local critic. I set the table and helped in the kitchen, invisible as always. As we sat down to eat, my mother raised her glass. To family, she toasted, and to celebrating our 35 years together. We clinked glasses and began passing dishes. The conversation flowed along familiar channels: my parents' bowling league, neighborhood gossip, and Jessica's musical endeavors. No one asked about my work beyond my father's perfunctory, "Lab job still going okay?" I nodded. "It's going well." The tension arrived with dessert. Jessica cleared her throat nervously. "I have some news," she announced. "I've been accepted to the master's program at Northwestern's Beanan School of Music." "That's wonderful," my mother exclaimed, reaching over to squeeze Jessica's hand. "It's really prestigious," Jessica continued. "Only 12 violinists were accepted this year, but," she hesitated, "it's expensive, really expensive, even with the partial scholarship they offered." My parents exchanged glances. "How expensive?" my father asked. "Tuition is $76,000 per year, plus living expenses in Chicago," Jessica replied. "So about $100,000 per year for the 2-year program." A heavy silence fell over the table. My parents were comfortable but not wealthy. $200,000 was well beyond their means, especially as they approached retirement. "I've applied for additional scholarships," Jessica added quickly, "but there's no guarantee." My mother reached for her water glass, her hand trembling slightly. "We'll figure something out. This is too important an opportunity to pass up." My father nodded, though worry lines creased his forehead. "Your career is worth the investment." Another silence fell, until I felt 3 pairs of eyes turn toward me. "What?" I asked, already knowing what was coming. "Olivia," my mother began carefully, "you've always been so good with money, so responsible. And your sister would do the same for you if the situations were reversed." "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "You have that savings account," my father said. "The one you've been adding to since graduation. You always said you were saving for a rainy day. Well, this is Jessica's rainy day." I set down my fork. "You want me to pay for Jessica's master's degree?" "Not all of it," my mother clarified quickly. "Just help out. Family helps family. That's what we've always taught you girls." The irony was almost too perfect. After years of minimizing my achievements and prioritizing Jessica's dreams, they were now asking me to empty my savings to further her education, with no awareness that the savings account they referred to now contained millions of dollars. "How much were you thinking I should contribute?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My parents exchanged glances again. "Well," my father said, "you've been working for several years now, living frugally. You must have at least $50,000 saved up, maybe more." "That would be a good start," my mother added. We could remortgage the house for another $50,000. And then with Jessica's scholarships and some student loans, we could make it work. I looked at Jessica, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Have you applied for student loans yourself?" I asked her. "The interest rates are terrible," she complained, "and I'd be starting my career with so much debt." "Unlike a stable lab job like yours," my mother interjected, "artists need freedom to pursue their passion without financial burdens." The assumption that my savings, my years of work and sacrifice, were somehow community property available for Jessica's latest career pivot sparked something in me. 2 decades of being the lesser daughter crystallized into a moment of clarity. "I don't think that's going to work for me," I said quietly. The shock in the room was palpable. I never refused family requests. "What do you mean it's not going to work?" my mother demanded. "It's not like you're doing anything important with that money. It's just sitting there while you work in that little lap job." "Actually," I said, taking a deep breath, "my job situation is a bit different than what I've told you." My parents exchanged confused glances while Jessica looked up from her plate for the first time that evening. "Different how?" my father asked. "I'm not an entry-level lab technician. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer of EnerStore Technologies." I paused, letting the information sink in. "We developed a revolutionary energy storage material, and Google just acquired our company for $1.2 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's wineglass stopped midway to her lips. My father's fork clattered onto his plate. Jessica's mouth literally hung open. "That's not possible," my mother finally stammered. "You would have told us something like that." "Would I?" I asked quietly. "When was the last time anyone in this family showed genuine interest in my work, or acknowledged my achievements without comparing them to Jessica's?" My father found his voice next. "But how much, what does this mean for you, financially?" My stake in the company was 27%. After taxes and payouts to our investors, I received just over $300 million. My sister made a choking sound. My mother grabbed the table edge as if to steady herself. $300 million, my father repeated, his voice barely audible. "Yes," I confirmed, "which is why it's somewhat ironic that you're asking me to empty my savings account for Jessica's tuition, which would be approximately 0.02% of my current net worth." "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother demanded, a note of accusation in her voice, as if my success were somehow a betrayal. "Because for as long as I can remember, my achievements have been minimized in this family, while Jessica's have been celebrated," I answered honestly. After a while, it seemed easier to keep things to myself than to have them dismissed. Jessica's expression shifted from shock to shame as she stared at her plate. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, perhaps seeing our family dynamic clearly for the first time. "I'm happy to pay for Jessica's program," I continued, "but I'd like some acknowledgement that my work and my choices have value, even though they're different from what this family typically celebrates." My father cleared his throat. "Olivia, we've always been proud of you." "Please don't," I interrupted gently. "Let's not rewrite history in this moment. You've consistently prioritized Jessica's achievements and needs over mine. I'm not saying this to hurt anyone, but if we're going to move forward honestly, we need to acknowledge the dynamic that's existed in this family." My mother wiped away tears. "I don't know what to say. I never realized. I never meant to make you feel less important." "I know you didn't do it intentionally," I said, "but it happened all the same." Jessica finally spoke up. I didn't realize either. I guess I thought that was our roles. I was the artistic one, and you were the practical one who didn't need the same kind of attention or support. Everyone needs recognition, I replied, especially from family. The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. Years of family patterns were examined under uncomfortable new light. My parents oscillated between apologies and defensiveness. Jessica remained uncharacteristically quiet, processing the revelation that her practical sister had achieved extraordinary success while she struggled to pay rent. I had no idea your work was so significant, my father finally admitted. That's the problem, I replied. You never asked. Could you explain it to us now? My mother requested hesitantly. What exactly did you create? For the first time in my adult life, I had my family's full attention as I explained our energy storage technology in terms they could understand. I described the potential environmental impact, the technical challenges we'd overcome, and the future applications Google was planning to develop. This could change the world, my father said slowly, genuine awe in his voice. That's the plan, I confirmed. That's what I've been working toward all these years. While we were focused on Jessica's violin recitals, my mother said quietly, the realization sinking in. I'm so sorry, Olivia, Jessica whispered. I had no idea I was overshadowing you like that. I just assumed you were doing fine without the spotlight. I did do fine, I assured her. But not because I didn't need recognition, because I found it elsewhere, from mentors and colleagues who valued my contributions. As the evening ended, my mother hugged me with unusual emotion. I'm sorry we didn't see you, she whispered. We're trying to understand now. Over the following weeks, our family dynamic began a slow but meaningful transformation. My parents called regularly, asking detailed questions about my work and plans. They sent me articles about renewable energy and battery technology, a small gesture but meaningful in its effort to connect with my world. Jessica and I had several honest conversations about our childhood and the competition our parents had unconsciously fostered. I always thought you had it together, she confessed during one of our talks. You never seemed to need approval the way I did. I just stopped expecting it, I explained. There's a difference. I did pay for her music program, but structured it as an investment in her education, rather than the family obligation my parents had initially framed it as. We established a proper education fund with clear terms, treating the arrangement with the respect it deserved. I don't want to take advantage of your success, Jessica told me when I presented the plan. It's not taking advantage if we're honest about it, I replied. You're my sister, and I want to support your dream. But let's do it as equals, not as the family star and the practical backup. 3 months after the Revelation dinner, my parents visited me in Cambridge. It was the first time they had shown interest in seeing where I worked and lived. I gave them a tour of the Enerstore Labs, now operating as part of Google's energy division, and introduced them to my colleagues. Your daughter is a genius, my former co-founder told them. She saw connections the rest of us missed completely. This technology wouldn't exist without her. My mother teared up at his words. Later that evening, as we sat in my apartment overlooking the Charles River, she took my hand. I've been thinking a lot about when you were little, she said. You were always in the garage mixing things or reading those science books. I thought it was just a phase or a hobby. I didn't recognize what it meant about who you were becoming. It's okay, Mom, I started, but she shook her head. No, it's not okay. We should have supported your interests the way we supported Jessica's. We should have seen your potential. I'm so sorry we missed it for so long. My father, never comfortable with emotional conversations, cleared his throat. We're proud of you, Olivia, not because of the money, though that's certainly impressive, but because you saw a problem that needed solving, and you figured out how to solve it. That's extraordinary. Their words, while healing, also highlighted how different our family might have been if they had recognized my value earlier. But there was no point dwelling on what couldn't be changed. What mattered was moving forward with greater understanding and respect. 6 months later, I funded a scholarship program at MIT for young women in materials science and energy technologies. At the inaugural ceremony, my parents and Jessica sat in the front row, genuinely proud and attentive, as I spoke about the importance of recognizing and nurturing diverse forms of talent and intelligence. Sometimes innovation comes from unexpected places, I told the audience. From quiet labs rather than spotlit stages, from methodical experimentation rather than dramatic flourishes. Our responsibility, as educators, as parents, as a society, is to recognize potential in all its forms and give it the support it needs to flourish. After the ceremony, a young scholarship recipient approached me with her parents. "Your story inspired me," she said shyly. "I've always been the practical one in my family, too." Her mother squeezed her shoulder. "We're learning to see her brilliance now," she told me. "We don't want to miss it the way your parents did." That moment crystallized something important for me. My success wasn't just measured in dollars or technological impact, but in helping change how we value different types of contributions and intelligence. Jessica eventually completed her master's program, graduating with honors. I attended her final recital, genuinely impressed by how her talent had developed. Afterward, she surprised me by announcing she was combining her musical background with her renewed interest in science by developing therapeutic applications of music for neurological conditions. "You inspired me to think bigger," she told me, "to use my abilities to solve problems, not just perform." Today, our family dynamic bears little resemblance to the hierarchy that defined our childhood. My parents have learned to appreciate both their daughters' distinct forms of intelligence and contribution. Jessica and I have developed a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition, and I've learned that sometimes the recognition we seek from family has to come after we've proven our worth to ourselves. The most profound change wasn't in how my family treated me after learning about my wealth. It was in how I learned to value myself, regardless of their recognition. Sometimes the validation we seek from family has to come from within before others can see it too. Have you ever had your achievements overlooked while a sibling was celebrated? Did you ever surprise your family by succeeding in ways they never anticipated? Share your experiences in the comments below. Success is the sweetest when it comes after years of being underestimated. And sometimes the best revenge isn't saying "I told you so." It's simply living well and letting the results speak for themselves. It's been 3 years since that pivotal family dinner where I revealed my success. The technology we developed has been implemented in grid storage projects across 4 continents, helping countries transition to renewable energy at a pace that was previously impossible. I've since left Google to start a new venture focused on sustainable materials for construction, another practical field with world-changing potential. My relationship with my family continues to evolve in positive ways. My parents have become enthusiastic supporters of my work, often sending me articles about climate technology or sustainable building materials they think might interest me. Jessica has successfully launched her music therapy program, combining her artistic talents with scientific rigor in ways that genuinely help people. Perhaps most significantly, our family gatherings have transformed. Achievements from both daughters are celebrated equally. Conversations flow more naturally, with genuine interest in each person's pursuits. The painful hierarchy that once defined us has been replaced by mutual respect and appreciation for our different strengths. Last Christmas, my mother pulled me aside as we were preparing dinner. "I've been thinking about how differently things might have turned out," she said quietly. "If we had recognized your gifts earlier, if we had supported you the way we supported Jessica." "We can't know that," I told her. "Maybe the challenge of proving myself was part of what drove me to succeed." She shook her head. "Don't let us off the hook that easily. Parents should see their children clearly. We failed at that for a long time." "But you see me now," I reminded her. "That's what matters going forward." And she does see me now. They all do. Not just the successful entrepreneur with the impressive net worth, but the curious, determined person I've always been. The recognition I yearned for throughout my childhood has finally arrived, albeit years later than it should have. I sometimes wonder how many other practical children are out there, their potential overlooked because it doesn't present in immediately impressive ways. How many quiet scientists, methodical engineers, or thoughtful analysts are being overshadowed by more dramatic talents? What innovations and solutions are we missing because we fail to recognize and nurture these different forms of brilliance? That's why I've shared my story today, not to claim victimhood or assign blame, but to highlight how easily we can miss the potential right in front of us when we have fixed ideas about what success looks like or which talents matter most. If you're a parent watching this, I encourage you to look carefully at each of your children, especially the quiet ones whose gifts might not be immediately obvious. The child mixing concoctions in the bathroom sink might be developing the scientific curiosity that leads to the next major breakthrough. The one meticulously organizing their collections might have the analytical mind needed to solve complex problems. And if you're the overlooked sibling, the practical one, whose achievements have been minimized or dismissed, know this: your value isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. Keep developing your talents, keep solving the problems that fascinate you, keep building and creating and innovating. Recognition may come late, but when it does, whether from family or the wider world, it will be all the sweeter for the journey you've traveled. I've received thousands of messages from viewers sharing similar experiences of being overshadowed by siblings or having their practical pursuits dismissed as less valuable than more visible talents. Your stories have touched me deeply and confirmed what I've long suspected. This family dynamic is remarkably common, and its effects can last well into adulthood. Some of you have asked about forgiveness, how I moved past the hurt of being overlooked for so many years. The truth is, forgiveness wasn't a single moment, but a process that continues to this day. There are still occasions when old patterns emerge and old wounds reopen. The difference now is that we can address these moments honestly, rather than pretending they don't exist. Forgiveness became possible when my parents acknowledged the imbalance that had existed rather than denying it. Their willingness to see their role in creating that dynamic, to genuinely listen to my experience without defensiveness, open the door to healing that would have remained closed if they had insisted on rewriting our family history. Others have asked whether financial success was necessary for my family to finally see my worth. Would they have recognized my value if I had made important but less lucrative contributions? I wish I could say definitely yes, but the reality is more complicated. The dramatic nature of my success made it impossible to ignore, creating a stark contrast that forced a reckoning with our family patterns. A more modest achievement might not have triggered such profound reflection. And that's perhaps the most troubling aspect of this story, that it sometimes takes extraordinary success to correct ordinary injustice. Not everyone who is underestimated will create a billion-dollar technology. Not every overlooked child will have such a dramatic way to prove their worth. This is why it's so important that we learn to recognize and nurture potential in all its forms before it needs to announce itself in ways that cannot be ignored. My journey from the overlooked daughter to successful entrepreneur isn't just about personal vindication. It's about highlighting how easily we miss the quiet brilliance among us when we're dazzled by more obvious forms of talent. It's about recognizing that innovation and impact often come from unexpected sources, from the practical problem solvers as well as the virtuoso performers. Today, my greatest hope isn't just for my technology to change the world, though that remains an important goal. It's for my story to change how we see the potential in those around us, especially the quiet ones whose gifts might change our world, if only we would notice them sooner. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, whether that's a parent who might see their child differently or the overlooked sibling who needs to know their practical brilliance matters too. Sometimes the greatest revenge against being underestimated isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right about who you've been all along.